Hey there, folks, it's Friday, and it's time for another movie retrospective.
Yeah, this is a good one. This is another Lovecraft one.
Yeah, we're going Lovecraft again, and look, dudes, I did the whole theme and everything. Look, Cthulhu, tequila. It's even like,
Yeah.
It's even like, has to do with the show and everything, you and your tequila, although you don't have any today.
No, not today. We got to get this over with.
I don't have any today, and actually I don't have a cocktail today, I just have black coffee.
Yeah.
I was using up the rest of the coffee that was in the pot from this morning.
Jenny's schedule's jammed. We got to get this new book out, and she's got a bunch of orders packing up for graphic design, so we got to go ahead and knock this one out.
Yeah.
This is a good movie, though. It's by the same company that did Dagon. At least it seems to be, isn't it?
No, it's not.
It's not? Okay, well, it has Jeffrey Combs in it.
Yeah, this is actually, it's a French-American co-production.
Okay, I knew
it was made in 1993, and it's usually just called Necronomicon, although it has some other alternate titles, like with little colon at the end, like Necronomicon Book of the Dead, or Necronomicon To Hell and Back, or H.P. Lovecraft's Necronomicon, but it's the same movie.
Yeah, and it's a hard-to-find movie. I can only find, like... Blu-ray and DVD bootlegs coming out of Greece.
Yeah, weirdly, this was not really a big...
Right.
I don't know. And here's the thing. It's an anthology movie. So it's going to be... it has like a wraparound story called The Library. Yeah. And it has Jeffrey Combs in weird makeup. He is actually playing H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah, he's playing Lovecraft, right.
And that whole sequence, it's very funny, like seeing him. He almost looks like Bruce Campbell.
Yeah, he does.
When you put all like the weird nose and the chin on him and stuff. Yeah. It's pretty creepy. But yeah, so he plays H.P. Lovecraft, and the whole wraparound story is that he has discovered that
the Necronomicon.
that the real Necronomicon is in this library, presumably in Providence, because that's the only place he ever lived. And the first part is set in the 30s. Yeah. So he actually goes to this library and kind of I don't think he's like intending to steal it, but he just wants to read it. Yeah,
to inspire him to write these stories that he's going to tell you as he's writing.
Yeah, so that's what he's doing. He's reading through the Necronomicon, and then it's like 3 different stories.
Yeah, and it's like it's not a normal library. It's like a cult library, or an occult library inside of a temple manned by a bunch of Egyptian cultists.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're like I don't know if they're a Cthulhu cult. There's
they're not humans, are they?
I don't think they were.
I don't think so. No, I don't think they're humans.
Because he took his skin off.
Yeah, and
so they may
generally humans don't do that.
They may have been. They may have been old ones or something.
Yeah, just like in monk suits, kind of thing with little bald heads. And everything. But yeah, he steals keys and he's like looking through the thing, and so they show him like writing the beginning of each story. Like he was inspired by the Necronomicon to write this particular story.
Yeah, it's 3 stories.
Yeah,
and then the wraparound story, and they're pretty good stories.
The 3 stories are. Now, if you're a fan of Lovecraft's work, these are pretty loose adaptations.
Yeah.
The first one is called The Drowned, and it's ostensibly based on the rats in the walls, even though it kind of has some elements of Shadow over Innsmouth. It kind of has some elements of Call of Cthulhu and a couple of other stories, too. And it kind of has to do with this guy that comes back. He gets called back to take over this really old, like, falling apart hotel that belonged to one of his ancestors. And he finds all his ancestors' papers, and it turned out that the ancestor, who was played by, what's that dude's name? Richard Lynch. Yeah. All you Mystery Science Theater fans out there, Richard Lynch was also in the very, very terrible, but also kind of wonderful 1995 movie, Werewolf, or Warwolf. If you want to say it like the weird girl that was in that movie.
Yeah.
One of the best MST episodes ever. So if you haven't seen it, you should go look it up because that movie is just hysterical. But he's in this, and he plays the ancestor, and evidently, I don't know, like, I'm not real clear on what he was a shipwreck, and he didn't save his wife and kid or something like that, and they died, and he brings them back. And so there's kind of like a thing where, the modern guy is calling back to the woman, like, calling back one of his girlfriend or his wife or whoever, who he accidentally killed the same kind of way.
Yeah. The second story is actually one that there was, they had a night, remember Night Gallery?
Night Gallery.
There was a Night Gallery adaptation of it. It was called Cool Air, or Cold Air.
Cool Air.
Cool Air, about a guy who, he seemed to be older than he should have been. He should have been 100-something years old, and he built this really crude air conditioning system. This is like back in the 1800s, or or it may have been early 1900s. It's been a long time I've seen it. and the AC breaks. But you find out that he had preserved himself. Well, that was actually based on an H.P. Lovecraft short story, and they tell a version of that story in this one. It's pretty good too.
And David Warner is in it.
Yeah.
And I love David Warner. He's good in everything.
Yeah, about how to prolong life and bring the dead back to life using some kind of essential salts. They don't really, it was some H.P. Lovecraft type technology.
This is alchemical type of stuff. And this one, the second one, it's weird because they didn't name them. I guess because they weren't going to that faithfully adapt them. So they didn't give them the same names as the stories. Like
just kind of reminiscent.
Yeah, the first one was just called The Drowned, and the second one was called The Cold, even though it's mostly based on cool air.
Right.
And now the third story was based on
Whispers in the Dark.
Whispers in the Dark.
Right.
Or so they say. Like, some people thought
it's not real.
It's not really close.
Yeah.
Actually, it almost seems more like there was one called The Nameless City, I think, that was sort of close to this. But it's almost like a Vision of Hell type of thing. And this one is probably the loosest adaptation out of all of them. And it's also by far the goriest.
Right.
This, like I said, came out in the early 90s. And if you're into gore, Tom Savini did supervise most of the effects on this, and they are very good.
Yeah, it's pretty disturbing, the very last one.
Yeah, so they're super, super gory, and the last one's really the goriest one. But it's also, like I said, the loosest adaptation.
Yeah, all this loose adaptation stuff, that's actually not a big deal because...
Not really.
That's actually... That was part of the tradition of Lovecraftian lore. Lovecraft kind of encouraged other people to kind of expand on his mythos. And you can't really put an H.P. Lovecraft story, most of them, you can't. They're not movable.
Not really.
Nothing really happens in them. It's all mood, most of them. And when something does happen, it's so vague. Like, in most of your Lovecraft stories, there aren't any real action scenes. It's kind of like something out of the old original... book Dracula, where like a series of reports or a series of letters tell the story. Lovecraft had a pretty baroque writing style. It's kind of like, I don't know.
Well, and the thing,
it's not even a. And he was born 100 years ago. But he was like something from 200 years ago, really. Yeah, he was much... He kind of
romanticized things much earlier than even he was born, and he was from the beginning of the 20th century.
Yeah, he was kind of an Asperger's type guy.
Yeah, he was kind of a weird dude.
He was a weirdo. He didn't have any social skills, really. He was sheltered, kind of. His mother didn't really show him any affection, really. He wasn't the kind of guy that really could, get laid, per se. It wasn't until much later, and... he grew up, but it took him a long time to grow up. He really didn't become a full-fledged man until he was probably in his 40s.
And like I said, like you said, I think it's
weird guy.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to adapt a lot of his stuff to film because so much of it has to do with subjective experience. So much of it is in the first person, and it's all from the narrator's point of view and how they feel about things. And that's really hard to show on screen.
Right.
In a story, it works really well because he's very good at building up atmosphere and building up mood and stuff like that. But, unless you're going to go the whole tentacled monsters route, there's really not a lot to show because a lot of his work has to do with what's unknown. It's we can't show it. It'll drive you mad and all this other kind of stuff. So they can't show it. So I do see why they do that type of thing where they're just okay, we're just going to do a loose adaptation, or they're going to do something that's Lovecraftian, like In the Mouth of Madness was.
Yeah.
The Thing is kind of.
Actually, the from what I remember reading, the only story that I thought was like a modern book that told a modern tale was Out at the Mountains of Madness.
Yeah, that was definitely his most modern.
That was like a modern horror tale, kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of almost like The Thing.
Yeah, it was very similar, and I think that's where The Thing, or
I think The Thing might have ripped that off.
Right. No, I mean, and that was based on The Thing from Another World,
which was
based on a book.
But, when you really look at The Thing, at least John Carpenter's version of The Thing, which is kind of also based on Who Goes There.
Yeah.
John Carpenter's interpretation of The Thing was a Shaggoth.
Yeah.
Which, we know that Carpenter read Lovecraft, so he's going okay,
Yeah.
My thing is a Shaggoth, which, you know.
So like I said, sometimes the best Lovecraft adaptations aren't actual direct adaptations at all.
No, they're fan fiction. Fan fiction.
I mean, because look at like Reanimator and From Beyond and stuff like that, which are
loosely based,
you know, nominally Lovecraft adaptations, but you know they took it in a different direction and they're very good. I think probably the closest one that's the best one is Dagon, which we've already done. That is very good at capturing the atmosphere
of what he's talking
about. Like, and it has that whole drippy, fishy kind of shit and everything.
He must not like seafood.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. He really had some problems with that kind of stuff.
Now, this movie here, like I said, it's hard to find. You can watch it for free, kinda. On Daily Motion, you can see the first hour of it in HD. It looks really good. Yeah. All right, and then the part 2 of it's missing. They took it down.
Yeah, we couldn't find part 2.
Then you can also watch the full version in HD on YouTube. The problem is the top of the screen and the bottom of the screen are cut out a little bit. You can still watch it, but it's not a full.
You're gonna miss a lot
screen, you know.
Yeah.
So I kind of would, if you want, unless you want to spring for the $20 to see the movie or to buy the Blu-ray or the DVD, you might be able to rent it on Amazon.
You probably can. I would think.
You might be able to check Amazon.
You know, most of that kind of shit you can get on streaming or whatever.
Yeah, but it's worth seeing the movie. It's kind of like along the lines of John Carpenter's Body Bags or maybe Tales from the Crypt. Yeah. But it's a Lovecraftian version of that.
I want to say it's like... I love anthology movies, generally. I mean, you know, they're mixed bag usually, but I mean, sometimes there's... you know, one segment in there that's like really good and kind of makes up for the other ones. I'm going to place this one. I don't think it's as good as like Creepshow, which we definitely have to do a show about, but it's for sure better than Cat's Eye, which I also actually kind of like. And I would put it around the same tier as Body Bags. It's kind of the same vibe. It's not quite as...
mainstream.
Well, it's not quite as wacky.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Like, you know, I don't know.
Body Bags was wacky and mainstream.
It had kind of a black humor, Tales from the Crypt.
Necronomicon does have a true Lovecraftian vibe to it.
Some of it does.
Some of it, yeah.
I'm going to say, here's what I'm going to say. The first segment, The Drowned, which was actually directed by Christophe Gans, the French director, who did The Brotherhood of the Wolf, which was actually a really good cult werewolf movie. That if you haven't seen that, you should probably go see that because it's really good. That, I'm going to say, has the most Lovecraftian vibe.
Yeah.
It has like the old gothic crumbling castle. It has kind of a Cthulhu-type monster.
Yeah.
And it has that kind of...
It has a ghost story feel
aesthetic to it, yeah. So I'm going to say that's the most Lovecraftian.
Yeah.
The second one, The Cold, with David Warner, that was based on Cool Air, is probably the most faithful adaptation of the story that it was supposedly based on. And I think it's the best segment as far as writing, acting... suspense, as far as that kind of thing goes. It has some gore in it, which is really entertaining, and it's just a good story. It's like a mystery story, like a story within a story. So I think that's kind of the best segment. The last segment...
That's actually my favorite one. She doesn't like it.
Yeah, the last segment I think is the weakest, just because for sure it's the goriest, it's the most fun.
It's action horror. It's action horror, and it's real disturbing.
It was directed by Brian Yuzna, who obviously worked on Reanimator and From Beyond and various other things, and also worked on Dagon.
Yeah, I thought the whole movie was done by that guy.
No. Okay. He just did the last
the last part?
Actually, the second segment with David Warner, that was actually directed by a Japanese director. That was Shisuke Kaneko, who actually did the 1995 Gamera movie, which was actually decent. I really liked that. But so he did the second one. But the third one, it's the goriest. I also think it's the least Lovecraftian. And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, it doesn't have a lot of plot. It's all visuals.
But you know what? Lovecraft sometimes doesn't have a plot and doesn't. There's no real plot line to a lot of Lovecraft stuff.
I'm not saying that.
I'm going to say it is Lovecraftian. It's just that the delivery is very modern.
It is, yeah. It's like a modern...
Right, but that was still the kind of shit that Lovecraft was talking about.
Yeah.
It's just that this is told to you in a very modern setting. And it's taking place in what, the 890s?
Yeah, it was a contemporary,
So the delivery was pretty contemporary, but that's still kind of the idea. Things living down in caves.
Yeah.
You know, and I guess they're aliens. It's not really explained.
Aliens or old ones.
They're aliens, and they seem to want to be able to kind of crossbreed with humans so they can live a better life, but you got to get rid of your body. They're gonna eat your body. I'm not gonna spoil it.
Which is kind of like Whisper in the Dark.
Kind of like Whisper in the Dark, right?
So yeah, where they were popping out your brain,
and it's pretty disturbing.
I have to say that the best gag, other than the melting gag in the second one, like the guy melting, in the third segment, which is called Whispers, the brain dead gag with the guy without. You know what I mean? Where they show the back of his head and it's
don't run it.
No, I'm not. That's actually my favorite. That's my favorite gag in the whole movie. But overall, like I said, I really like this movie. I like anthology movies. It's a little uneven, like all anthology movies.
Not as good as Dagon.
It's not as good as Dagon. It's not as good as Dagon.
On par with Reanimator and From Beyond, but different. It's an anthology, kind of like Body Bags. But I would say it's on par with. Not as classic. Yeah. I would say it was the weakest out of the three, but it's there. Yeah, it's good enough to watch.
And like I said, if you're into Lovecraft and you don't mind like some liberties being taken, or you're more into like Lovecraftian type of stuff, then probably you will get into this if you're not going to be too.
Yeah, I don't worry about I don't worry about the liberties because every movie with Lovecraft's name on it, many liberties were taken. You have to.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. It's
because of the literature.
Yeah,
and Lovecraft encouraged that. I mean, Lovecraft kind of had a little cult of admirers and fans that followed him in his lifetime, and they wrote their own spin and they added to his mythos, and he encouraged it. You could do it just as and they all rated it. That's what Dr. Price does. He writes Lovecraft stuff. Matter of fact, we saw him on one of the documentaries about
Fear
Lovecraft.
of the Unknown that came out a while back. Well, that had Neil Gaiman and Ramsey Campbell and all those type of people that wrote Lovecraftian type takeoffs. So later on, but I always feel like if you're going to adapt a Lovecraft story directly, I always liked the approach of. I don't know. You can do a modern adaptation. Like I said, look at In the Mouth of Madness, which was very Lovecraftian, but it wasn't directly based on a Lovecraft story. Right. And if that's the direction you're going to go, if you want it to be set in the modern era, then that's what you should do.
Yeah.
I feel like if you're going to adapt a story directly, then you should probably set it at the time that it was written. Because that's one thing I really like about, the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society, where they made like Call of Cthulhu and they made Whisper in the Darkness, and they set it
in those days.
And actually, Call of Cthulhu, they set it so it looked like a silent movie from that era.
Yeah, and it also was kind of like a silent era, kind of crossbred with King Kong.
Yeah, and it was really awesome. And I thought that was like a really cool like aesthetic choice. It really gave that whole Lovecraftian vibe, the same vibe that I get when I read one of his stories. So, I feel like that's kind of a cool thing to do. I think that's why I probably think like this... I liked the wraparound segment of this a lot because it was set in the 30s, with Jeffrey Combs playing H.P. Lovecraft, and I liked that whole aesthetic. Some of the other ones, maybe that's why I didn't like the third one as much, because it was set in the present day.
Yeah.
And to me, it just didn't have...
Yeah, and
that
somehow,
Lovecraft kind of magic
and
to it.
Somehow Lovecraft's in this occult library with the Necronomicon, being inspired to write these 3 stories.
Right.
And some of these stories are happening in Lovecraft's future.
Yeah, because they would be.
They would have to be, because,
I mean, the second segment, I had a hard time, because it was, I guess, the part that was set in the modern day, and then part of it was set, in 20 years before. Although it looked like earlier than that. Some of it looked like the 50s, but I couldn't figure out, what time period it was supposed to be.
Out of all of them, I'm going to say Dagon.
Well, yeah.
It was the best Lovecraft. Even the black and white ones you were talking about, that was an accurate depiction.
Yeah.
I still think Dagon's better than those. I'd rather watch Dagon than this old one.
Well, yeah, like I said, Dagon kind of has everything.
It has everything.
It's an entertaining movie. It has a lot of gore. It has a lot of action.
Great music sound.
Yeah, really good soundtrack, but it is also...
The Blu-ray's beautiful.
But it is also really reminiscent of an actual Lovecraft story. Yeah. So I think they really got it on the mark right there.
Right.
But, this one, like I said, if you like Lovecraft, if you like anthology-type movies, then probably you should check this one out if you haven't seen it. And like I said, I love Jeffrey Combs, so I'm gonna see pretty much anything he's in. I don't care.
Yeah, he does a good job.
But yeah, so anyway, that'll do it for our Lovecraftian inspired movie retrospective for today. I can't talk. I've had too much coffee. Remember, if you like the show, to like, share, subscribe with all your friends and share on all your social media, because it really helps us out a lot. If you'd like to financially support the show, you can go to our Patreon page, which is patreon.com/13o'clockpodcast, or you can go to our blog, which is 13o'clockpodcast.wordpress.com, and there's a link in the sidebar to a PayPal account. Actually, I forgot to show. Look at this, you guys. I got this at Barnes & Noble, a while back.
Big old Lovecraft
book. Look at how beautiful that is. It was only, I think this was what, $15?
Yeah.
$18, something like that. And this has everything. And look, it's in silver on the side, and it's got like a little purple bookmark type ribbon there.
That's almost everything he's written, right?
It is everything.
It's everything.
This is the complete H.P. Lovecraft. Yeah, so this was like actually a really good deal. I don't know if they're still selling it at Barnes & Noble. I just got it in the front of Barnes & Noble a couple months ago. Or
got that at the mall, actually.
Yeah. It was at the Altamont Mall. But yeah, so that'll do it for this installment. Be sure to check out our regular episodes every Tuesday and our movie reviews every Friday. Until next time, bye.